Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Do you guys remember from yesterday's lesson? I am going to cover this quickly. I'll uncover yesterday's lesson. We talked about if two triangles are congruent, then corresponding angles are congruent and corresponding sides are congruent. Do you guys remember this? Mm-hmm. Yes? Now this goes for any polygon. It doesn't have to be a triangle. It can be a congruent pentagon or congruent hexagon. As long as they're congruent, corresponding angles are congruent and corresponding sides are congruent. Do you guys agree? So is that the same thing as saying corresponding parts, meaning sides and angles, of a congruent triangle, of congruent triangles are congruent? Mm-hmm. Yes? All right, that's what we're going to be using today. So in the beginning, we're just going to start off pretty basic, kind of do what we were doing the other day in class when we were looking for side angle side, and we're going to take it one step further. All right, now I'm going to quickly put up yesterday's worksheet that we did together in class. Do you guys remember that yesterday what were we trying to prove over and over? For example, number 4, I'm trying to prove that two triangles are congruent, equal, the same. Am I doing the same thing on number 5, trying to prove that two triangles are congruent? Yes? And are we doing the same thing with number 6, trying to prove that two triangles are congruent? Yes, and the same thing with number 7, proving two triangles are congruent. And look at the way they all ended. Here I have angle, angle, side. Here I have side, side, side. Here we didn't finish it off, but down here at the bottom I have side, angle, side. They all end with those 3-letter postulates because we were trying on all of them to prove that two triangles are congruent. Today what we're trying to prove is parts of the triangle are congruent. For example, number 1, we're going to try to prove that side AB is congruent to side XY. Okay, so what am I trying to prove? Two triangles are congruent or parts of the triangle are congruent? Am I trying to prove the two triangles are congruent or parts of the triangle are congruent? Parts. Can you guys say that? We're trying to prove that parts are congruent, which means we first have to prove the triangles are congruent. All right, I'm going to give you some freebie markings. Angle B is congruent to angle X. That's given information. Side BC is congruent to CX. And with just that given, can I prove that these two sides are congruent? For example, with just this picture as it is, without putting any more markings, can I just, I'm going to erase it so don't mark it on yours. Can I just mark it there and there because I feel like it? Can I do that? No, do you guys agree? I can't just put markings in there because I feel like it. All right, but there are certain markings I am allowed to add to this triangle. Can anybody tell me what those markings are and why? The what?
Angle.
The angle markings here? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. Okay, I messed up. How did I mess up? Why do I have to put, is it always 2 or why in this case do I have to put 2? There's already 1 here and they're not congruent to those 2, so I have to put 2. Okay. What's the reason? Why am I allowed to do this? I heard somebody say it. What is it? Vertical angles are congruent. Okay, now we did this yesterday. We cover one triangle and we look and we check. How many angle markings do I have? 2. There's 3 angles, but 2 of them have markings in them. How many side markings? Is that side included or not included? Included. Which means it's going to be angle, side, angle. Good. So is this congruent by angle, side, angle? Yes or no? Yes. That's where we would have stopped yesterday. But today I'm trying to prove that sides are congruent. Now that I've proved, and we did it already by saying angle, side, angle, now that we proved the two triangles are congruent, can we now say, oh, AB must be congruent to XY? Can we now say that?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent.
You are correct. Did you guys hear him? Because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So now we're able to say, hey, AB is congruent to XY. Now, when you're doing your proofs, you don't have to write all this out. You can if you want to. I'm going to give you the shorthand for it. Are you ready? So, because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That's a shorthand as I'm going to allow you to go. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. All right, do you guys agree again that I can say that these two sides are congruent because the two triangles are congruent? Yes? All right, this is what we're going to use over and over today in this period, over and over throughout this unit and units to come. Now, they didn't ask me to prove it, but could I also say that angle A is congruent to angle Y for the same reason? Yes? What other sides could I say are congruent? Side AC and side CY? I know, I need to work on my letters. All right, AC and YC, do you agree those sides are also congruent? All right, they didn't ask us, we don't have to write it, but we could if we needed to, for the same reason, say those sides and angles are congruent. All right, we're going to try another one. Number 2. S, T, Q, P. All right, I am going to give you information. Thank you guys for not having your phones out and keeping them put away. I'm going to mark SP and QP are congruent. I'm also going to mark this angle right here. Can you guys tell me if I'm allowed to call that angle P? I'm not allowed to. Why not? Do I have more than one angle in that corner?
Yeah.
And if I call it P, do we know if we're talking about the one on the right or the one on the left? Or the big angle altogether? All right, so what 3 letters would I use to name that angle? I heard SPT and TPS. Are both of those okay? Could I use PTS if I'm talking about that corner? No, the angle corner needs to be in the middle, so SPT or TPS. The other marking I'm going to give you is for this one here, which I would call TPQ or QPT. Okay, with just those markings, would we be able to prove that angle S is congruent to angle Q? So when you're taking the test, the question you want to ask yourself when you come to a proof, what am I trying to prove? That two triangles are congruent or parts of the triangle are congruent? This case it's parts. If your answer is parts, your last statement is going to be this. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That'll be your last reason. Okay, so could I just say, well, I want to say these triangles are congruent because they look congruent. Can I do that? No. Now there is a marking I am allowed to write, just like I did the vertical angles. I can do something here. They're not vertical angles, but what is it? The line in the middle. Can I say that TP is congruent to itself? TP is congruent to TP. What's that reason? Do you guys remember? Starts with an R. Reflexive property. Good job. Reflexive property. A side is equal to itself. Okay. Now, cover a triangle. How many side markings do you have? 2? It's kind of hard to see because I have that one covered. How many side markings do I have? How many angle markings? 1. Is the angle included or not included? So, side, angle, side? Yes or no? Yes. Side, angle, side, because the angle is included. I'm going to put a little side, angle, side over at the side here. Now that we've said the triangles are congruent by side, angle, side, can we now say that angle S is congruent to angle Q? Why? Good. So we would say angle S is congruent to angle Q because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Again, this is a piece that we're going to use over and over. Now, on the test, this is about as shorthand as I will accept. If you don't like the shorthand, could you write it all out like this? Yes. Now, I just want to give you a heads up that something you will see, not you might, you will see like on a quiz or a test or a worksheet is CPCTC. Now, I'm showing you this only because when you see it, I want you to recognize that you are not allowed to use it. When you're doing homework or quizzes or a test and you put this as your reason, instead of writing this out, I'm not going to accept it. This is what I want you to write, this or this. What do you think CPCTC stands for? Congruent triangles are congruent. Now, can you write that when you're doing your proofs?
No.
Should you know what it means when you see it, and you will see it?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I can continue doing notes, or we can start homework together.
Homework.
Okay. So if you will please take out your packets. Now, I know that I did not finish this page with you guys yesterday. At the end of the period today, if there's time, I'll work on it. If not, we'll work on it next week, like on a block day or when we have more time. I do want to do more of these with you. Did any of you guys try them on your own like I asked? Yeah? And I'm hoping you did. We will go over it together in class either the end of the day today or next week. Okay, so let's open up 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do number 1 with you. Number 2 you can do on your own. Okay. Number 1, for each pair of triangles, tell why the 2 triangles are congruent. I'm going to cover right there. How many angle markings do I have?
1.
Just 1. How many side markings? Just 1. Angle side, is that enough? Or side angle? No, I need something else. Another side or another angle. What am I allowed to put in and why? Yes.
You can put in another angle.
Good. Right in the inside here?
Yes.
And can you give me the reason?
Because they
Good job. Vertical angles are congruent. I want us to get used to recognizing that, because when we write in proofs, we need to know that. We need to write that down. Vertical angles are congruent. Okay. Number 1, A. Tell why the 2 triangles are congruent. That's like the ASA, SAS stuff. So let's cover. Now, how many angle markings do I have? How many side markings do I have?
1.
Is the side marking included
Yes.
or not included? Included means sandwich. Is it sandwiched between the 2 angle markings?
No.
So would I say angle, side, angle, or angle, angle, side?
Angle side.
Angle, angle, side. All right, so that's your answer for A. angle, angle, side. Part B, give the congruence statement. Congruent statement is triangle blah 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 is congruent to triangle blah blah blah. Okay, so triangle fill in is congruent to triangle fill in. On the test, I will give you the first one and ask you only to fill in the second one. But let's get practice right now on how to fill in both. Okay, how many triangles am I dealing with here? Two, and they are congruent to each other, yes? Because of what? The vertical angles allowed us to use what? Angle, angle, side. Okay, so I'm going to cover here. What three letters do I have? J, K, and H. The first three letters you use, if it's not already given to you, you can put in any order you want. J, K, H, H, K, J, H, J, K, it doesn't matter. The first set, if it's not given to you, put in any order. Which order do you want to use? Okay, I heard J, K, H first. J, K, H. After you get the first one, can you be random for the second, or do you have to go in order? You have to go in order. So let's see what she did. She went J, K, H, which is single, double, to none. Single, double, to none. Single, double, none. It has to be that same order. Single, double, none. So what order would I have to use?
LKM.
Good job, guys. LKM. Do you guys see how that works? Good. Now, what did I say on the test? I will give you the first one. You will have to fill in the second one. If it's not filled in for you, either one, you pick the order for the first, and the second one has to follow.
Wait, can you explain that again?
So the first one she gave me, she just said JKH, and I took it. But you could use any order if it's not given to you. After the first one is picked, we said, we followed it. JKH is a single marking, a double angle marking to no angle marking. Single, double, none. You have to go in that same order. Single, double, none. So LKM is what we all agreed on. Make sense? All right, next one it says, list all the congruent angles. All right, so angle, I'm going to go with J first. Angle J is congruent to, now J has one angle marking. What angle is that in this picture? L. Okay. Angle, the next one I'm going to go to is H. Angle H is congruent to angle. Now H is the only one with no angle marking. What is that over here? M. Now I'm at the vertex angles in the middle. I've asked this before. Could I just call these both angle K? No, it has multiple angles in there. And calling it K, are you talking about the one on the left or the one on the right? We need to be specific. So that one there, if I'm talking about K, what three letters would I use and in what order? JKH. Or could you do HKJ? Yes. Okay, JKH is congruent to angle, what order on this side? LKM or MKL. Okay, questions? All right, the last piece is asking us to list all corresponding sides. All right, so I'm actually going to try it without the picture and just use my statement because we can. I'm going to use the first two. Oh, sorry, up here. I'm going to use the first two. JK, what would I say? JK with what? It's the first two. So JK and okay is congruent to LK. Next one is, I'm going to use the last two. That's KH. KH is the last two with what? KM. Do you guys agree with her? Not just sure. Yes? Okay. Now, what do I use for the last set? I've used the first two, the last two. I'm going to use the first and the last. So JH will match with what? JH with LM. let's check it. JK and LK. JK and LK have no markings, but JK is the one between the 1 and the 2 marking, and LK is also between the 1 and the 2. Is that correct? Okay, KH and KM is between the 1, the 2 and the none, the 2 and the none. Is that correct? And JH is the one with the marking, and LM. So did we match them up correctly? Yes? All right, number 2 is the same thing. Can anybody tell me just by looking what blank A is going to be? Why is it side, side, side? Could we put that third marking in? All right, you guys can finish that later. All right, number 3. Now is where we get to the proofs. Okay, they give us this picture, and it tells us that YA is congruent to BA. Can you look at your picture and see if that's already marked for you? YA is congruent to BA. Is it already marked for you? Yes? Okay. And then it goes on to say that angle B is congruent to angle Y. Is that already marked for you? Okay. The reason for 1 is given. What must be the statement? The given information. Good. YA is congruent to BA. And angle B is congruent to angle Y. Given information. And it's already marked. We're good. Okay. Now the next statement they give us is YAZ is congruent to BAC. Where is YAC and BAC in this picture? What angles are they referring to? This top one? Let's trace it. YAZ. Which angle am I tracing? Y to A to Z. Which angle did I just make? Do you see that one?
Yeah, the little A.
The little A, the top A. And then BAC. BAC is talking about that one. What are those two angles called? Why are we allowed to say?
Because they're congruent.
They are congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. The next statement is ASA. If they give you a reason like that, a reason is ASA, that means they've already proved the two triangles are congruent. So let's look at the picture. Do we agree that ASA is the correct reason why these two triangles are congruent?
Yes.
Angle, side, angle. Do we all agree? Okay. What goes here then is the congruent statement. If you're saying angle, side, angle, what goes here is the congruent statement, kind of like we did up here. And what did I say about if it's not given to you, how do you pick the first three? Randomly? Does it matter? Can the second one be random? No. All right. So triangle, what 3 letters do we have at the top? YZA. Pick any order. YZA is what I heard first. Triangle YZA. YZA went from the single to nothing to the double. Single, none, double. Single, none, double. What is my order for the second one? BCA. Triangle BCA. And the two triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. All right. And I should have asked this from the get-go. What are we trying to prove? That triangles are congruent or parts of the triangle are congruent? Parts. If I was just trying to prove triangles, I would stop here and be done. The triangles are congruent, angle, side, angle, we're all good. But if I'm trying to prove that parts, excuse me, that parts are congruent, what's this statement going to be here, that long one? Good job. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And we're done with the proof. Again, why am I allowed to say that AZ is the last two, is congruent to AC, which is also the last two? Why am I allowed to say those two corresponding sides are congruent? Because I proved, yeah, they're on the same side. I proved that the two triangles were congruent first. Questions? All right. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to read it and see if all the markings are in place. Are the markings already there for you? Did they give us angle SPT is congruent to angle OPT? And side SP is congruent to OP. Okay. Now, what am I trying to prove? The triangle's congruent or the parts are congruent? Parts. Now, taking a step back to our notes, if we're trying to prove that parts are congruent, we need to first prove that the triangles are what? What is it? Congruent. So without even looking at the proof, can anybody tell what we're going to have to do without looking at the proof and the setup? Knowing what we did yesterday in class, what am I going to mark here?
Part of the side.
The side. Which side? The middle. And what's the reasoning for that? You're thinking of the other one. This reflexive. Okay. Now looking at one triangle, how many side markings do I have? How many angle markings? And is that angle included or not included? Included. So could I say the two triangles are congruent? By what? All right. And once I've proven the two triangles are congruent, can we then say that corresponding sides or angles are congruent? Yes or no? All right. We're pretty much done with the proof. We just have to fill it in. Since we've talked about it, I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to fill everything. Go ahead and do it. We finished it. We just need to write it down. I'm going to have you guys do that now. Matthew, sorry. Can you tell me what you put here for the TP is congruent to TP?
Reflective property.
Good job. Do you guys agree with him? My other Matthew. Put that away. The next statement is the two triangles are congruent. We talked about it earlier. Why are these two triangles congruent?
Do I say like the reason?
The reason would be something like angle, side, angle, or side, side, side. So which one is it?
Side angle.
Side, angle, side. Good job. Do you guys agree with him that it's side, angle, side? All right. Now, oh, sorry. Forgot my S. Now it's saying that angle S is congruent to angle O. Is that true? And what's the reason? Good job. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. How do I know when this is going to be my last statement, my last reason? Is when, it's right here, corresponding parts. When I'm trying to prove that parts of the triangle are congruent, angles or sides. Let's flip the page. Okay. So, again, ignore everything down here and let's just look at the picture. These are a lot like what we had yesterday. What am I trying to prove? Triangles are congruent or parts of the triangle are congruent? Parts. If I'm trying to prove that parts are congruent, I must first prove what about these two triangles? They are congruent. All right. Right now, the only thing I have is how many side markings? Is side enough? All right. What can we add? Good job. Yes. The angle. And what are these called? Vertical angles. Is it okay to mark it with one?
Yes.
Yes. Why? Because there's no other angle markings there already, so it's okay to put the one. Okay. without even thinking much about it, actually I'm going to cover it. How many side markings? How many angle markings?
One.
Is the angle included or not included? So what would we say? SAS. Okay. So now can we say the two triangles are congruent by SAS? Therefore, can we say that the corresponding angles are congruent? Angle B and angle D. Yes? All right. Go ahead and fill it in. Easy one. The number one should be the easy one. What is it? Given. That's the freebie. Can anybody tell me what angles they're talking about here? BCA and DCE? Which ones are they talking? Which one? Do you have a special name for them? What angles are they talking about? Are they talking about the vertical angles? All right. So what would I put in number 2?
Vertical angles are congruent.
Good job. Vertical angles are congruent. All right, statement 3 already gives it to us at the two triangles, so we don't have to make that statement up. The two triangles are congruent. Did anybody get it? Is it SAS? All right, and we talked about that earlier. All right, typically we would be done, but we're not asking just that. We're asking to prove that angles are congruent. So why can we now say that angle B is congruent to angle D? Good job. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. All right. Questions before we move on? And we'll get as much done as this one as we can. We'll at least talk about it, and you can fill in the fill-in piece on your own, which means this other worksheet we'll have to do next week. All right, so taking a look. What does that symbol right there mean?
Parallel.
Parallel. And how do we show parallel over here? That is the arrows. Okay, the sides are also congruent, which has the marking there. Trying to prove the triangles are congruent or parts of the triangle are congruent. Parts, which means we have to first prove the two triangles are what? Okay. Anybody can tell me, we know that these sides are congruent. What other side can we say is congruent? This one here? And what's the reason? So are we going to use reflexive property somewhere in here? Yes, you can do that later on your own. Reflexive property. Here's the next piece that kids can forget sometimes. The lines are parallel. Can you see that? And with them being parallel, can you see this Z shape? Yes? And what did we say about these angles right in here of the Z shape? They are, they're congruent. What's the special name for them? Alternate. If we're not sure, I'm going to extend. Do you agree these are the lines that are parallel? This is the transversal. These are my exteriors. These are my interiors. So is this alternate interior or alternate exterior? Interior. Because these out here are the exteriors, these two out here and these two out here. These little guys in there are the interior. So we would say alternate interior angles. So can anybody tell me where in this picture they're referring to these two angles? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 2. So I just want to tell you how to write it here. That one I will give you. You start by saying because lines are parallel, arrow, alternate interior angles are congruent. Parallel line markings to say, hey, because the lines are parallel, alternate interior angles are congruent. Is that enough to say, I'm going to cover one quickly. Can we say those two triangles are congruent? What's the reason?
Reflexive.
Let's look right here. How many side markings?
2.
How many angle markings?
1.
Is it angle included or not included? So what would we say? Side, angle, side. So side, angle, side is going to be somewhere in here as well. What's your last statement going to be? All right, so you know this is given. You know this is corresponding parts. You know there's a side, angle, side in there somewhere. We know there's a reflexive property. Those are the only two you have to figure out. Got it?